Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank everyone and show my appreciation for all those who have organized this conference, and specifically Biblioteca Alexandrina and Tima. I would like to thank all our technical team who have organized this conference virtually through Zoom. As you can see here, I'm going to speak about my topic, which is the history of Zinder, the addition and different details about the history of Zinder. Through this workshop, I'm going to speak about different points. At the very beginning, I'm going to give a presentation about those who have written or the scribers of these manuscripts, and then I'm going to give a briefing about the manuscript itself and its different specifications and the catalogy of the manuscript. And I'm going to look into the details of the manuscripts and its analysis, the historical analysis, linguistic analysis, the translation of the manuscripts, all of this, and then the annotations. All of this we're going to see in this presentation. And at the very end, or at the third part, I'm going to speak about the translation, as I have mentioned, and how the translation was done. I'm speaking about the translation of the manuscripts. Afterwards, we're going to speak about, and then we're going to conclude the session. At the very beginning, before I go into the details of this presentation, I would like to introduce in brief this type of manuscripts. It's the history of Zinder. And I have worked on this type of manuscripts, and that was through one of the main projects for the collection or the discovery of manuscripts in Arabic scripts and Ajami through a project in 2008. The main aim and objective of this project was, it is a project about the framework or the national framework, the national political framework, about the about giving value or appreciating the value of cultural heritage, and it's aimed at reaching manners of conservation and maintenance of these manuscripts. Within this project, we have invited many countries on board with us, and also we have visited many other countries. So we can analyze and we can discover all of the manuscripts that exist in these countries. I'm speaking about mainly African countries. And we have actually found many manuscripts owned by families, by people in villages and rural areas. And hence it was a very successful project. When it comes to giving value to these, or evaluation of these manuscripts, we know that we have to work on the conservation and maintenance of these manuscripts as to give them value. And we also found out that in some of the African countries, there are people who, or citizens who realize the value of these manuscripts, and others who have no idea. But through campaigns and the work campaigns, projects and field work that we have done, we were able to reach many of the manuscripts, collect them and conserve them so we can reprint them afterwards. When it comes to the manuscripts that we found, we found Tarikh Zinder, or the history of Sinder. And this is the book that I have published, that I have written about the history of Sinder, which is actually the history of a group of people. And this is the transcript, the manuscript that you can see right in front of you. And as you can see here, we have the manuscript on the screen, and we also have the published books that I have written. And I have worked on reprinting these manuscripts afterwards. And the objective was to spread the word about, for all of the people who own some of these manuscripts, on their value and their importance, so that we raise their awareness and communicate with these families about this issue. For those who are concerned about the matter, who give attention to the matter, specifically when it comes to the cultural heritage, social heritage, and the codicology. The history of Zinder, or Tarikh Zinder, sometimes it's actually pronounced as Sinder or Zinder. However, it is written in an S. But when we spell it, or when we pronounce it, it's Zinder. I also want to say that the word Sinder or Zinder has multiple ways of spelling it or writing it. However, when we pronounce it, we will always say Zinder with a Z sound. However, some people, some countries would call it Sinder with a S sound. So hence we had some issues when it comes to the pronunciation of this word between Sinder and Zinder. And that's why I wrote the history of Sinder with an S when it comes to the writings of my book, and also through manuscript. This is what we found out. And afterwards we understood that it is supposedly Zinder with the Z or Z. And I have studied this manuscript for over 3 years. The writer of this manuscript is a person called Boukhari Tanoudi, and as you can see, he is a great scholar, and he has written down many of the other manuscripts that have to do with the history of Nigeria. And he also worked along Bubo Hama, and this is Bubo Hama that you can see here in this image. He's also a great scholar, and he's a scientific, he's a philosopher, he's a historian, and he really gives attention to arts and literature, and he was born in 1906. These two men were truly great scholars and role models, and they were iconic people in Nigeria. And we have to say that Boukhari Tanoudi has been inspired by all of his ideas from Bubo Hama. And Boukhari is still alive up till now. And to me, the manuscript that he has written, Tarikh Zinder, or the history of Sinder, it was written in 1968, and Buhama asked him to do that. And when it comes to Tarikh Zinder, or history of Zinder, it's a manuscript that is also that has another version in the French language, and it holds number 37. And here, as you can see, this is the page 47, RISHUM, cataloging symbol, IRSHUAM. In page number 47, we can see the reference of this manuscript.
And if we move now to the presentation on the codicological study of the manuscript, I can say that the attempt to translate any manuscript, we should take certain things into consideration, and these are important steps so that we can understand the manuscript. And I would like to proceed with my presentation, that if there are any questions, you can raise your hands to take your questions during the presentation, or we could leave the questions till the very end after I finish my presentation. Regarding the codicological or codicology, it is the science that allows us to understand the manuscripts and to study manuscripts, and also the analysis of the material presentation of the writing and the paper. And this, of course, helps us to value or evaluate this manuscript. It doesn't only have to do with the content, but also work working on the manuscript in general. So there are some aspects related to the aesthetics or the method of writing. All of this falls under the umbrella of codicology, which helps in many ways to delve or to have a close study of the appearance as well as the content of the manuscript, so that we can understand the manuscript in general before we start analyzing the contents of that manuscript. Here, the manuscript number 37 from volume 1 of the manuscript catalogue that is conserved in the Department of Arabic Manuscripts and Ajami manuscript in the Abdou Moumouni University in Niger. It starts with Basmala and after Basmala, we find the author's name, then the title, and it has 47 folios, 27 folios. The number of pages is 47, and it is dated 1968. And the title is ضياء النيجر من تاريخ زندر. And instead of saying ضياء النيجر من تاريخ زندر, so we in a way shortened the title to Tarikh Zinder, and this manuscript was numbered, and at the same time it contains 27 folios. And 47 pages. And it was dated 1968. And the beginning of the manuscript يا بني إن زندر في زمن قديم كان ذات أشجار وديان. And the end of the text وهذا ما أنعم الله عليه وقدر لي ما أطيق انتهى. And as you can see also, this signals the end of the manuscript. Then alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. As I mentioned at the beginning, that at the beginning يا بني إن زندر في زمن قديم كانت ذات أشجار وديان, and we find three dots at the beginning, which means that there was a sentence before that would be Salatu wassalam al Rasul. It could, or this could be the beginning of the manuscript or the text in the manuscript. And after Basmala or Bismillah, as I said, we go to Salatu wassalam al Rasul, and then we move on to the sentence we have here, يا بني زندر في زمن قديم, and so on and so forth. And as I said before, we start with the intro, the beginning of the text, and then or sorry, the name of the author and the title, and the beginning of the text, and then the end of the text. This is the codicology of this manuscript. As for the subject of this manuscript, it is the history of Zinder. It is also the title. It has to do with the social history of Zinder in the 19th century during the colonial era, and it also tackles the history of the Sultanate of Zinder and the socio-political conditions and the relationship with other sultanates, and also the Kazimaju mission that was tasked with exploring this area, Cyber, on reaching to the Chad Lake. And there is also a manuscript written 60 years later, which means that we were able to get official information that was being documented, which means that this knowledge was transmitted orally, and then it was documented in writing. Because as we know that history, all history started in oral fashion, and then it was later documented in writing. Before the critical editing, we'll go into the critical editing of the manuscript. I would like to ask a question, direct a question to the organizers of the conference. Do I reply to questions now or leave that till the end? The critical editions of the manuscripts. Of course, we're talking about African manuscripts and the work done in that respect on critically editing these manuscripts and the work on the African manuscripts was done directly. Especially the translation of the manuscript, and usually researchers would rush to the translation, skipping the codicological study of the manuscripts, and of all of these steps are connected. We cannot translate the manuscript without codicologically studying it and analyzing it. We cannot do this by ignoring, just translating and ignoring the history of the manuscript. So we should get first to know the text, and in order to read this text, we must study the different codicological issues and also grammar and other things in the text. And also we should put the manuscript in its context, especially manuscripts related to West Africa, what we call Ajami script that was used in this region. And it is very important to follow a number of steps for editing the manuscript, and we have many copies of the manuscript that we can critically edit. We should at least have 2 copies of the manuscript to do this, and we should also collect manuscripts, especially African manuscripts. We should have, because there are collections scattered everywhere, and it is not easy to find these different copies. We should have at least 2 copies of the manuscript, and we find, and that should be in the same library, but this is not always the case. Sometimes the copies are in several libraries. It is difficult to collect them, and so we can start with 1 copy, because we could find difficulty in getting a second copy, and then we can collate it with other copies, and also we then will know which copy is the original and the one that should be collated, and we should use the older manuscript or copy as the original, or sometimes also we should look for dates. Some copies are complete, others are fragments, and so there are many factors that determine which one is manuscript A, and manuscript B. We choose manuscript A, for instance, to be the original manuscript according to the date or whether it's a complete version, and the legibility of the manuscript, whether we can read it, because sometimes it's difficult to read. And also if it is a fragment, it will be difficult to work on it. And so we choose the original manuscript based on the dating, the legibility, whether it's complete in its complete form or not. And the editing takes place on the original manuscript, and what is analyzed and translated will take place for manuscript A, and in this case we should take this into consideration. And when we collate all copies, we write on the differences between these copies, and this should be a coordinated or coherent process. If you have two exact copies and they have the same value, in this case, this will make the work, as I said, more coherent and more and easier. And this is the plan of the critical editing, and it has a number of elements, and this is the most demanding part in looking at the life of the manuscript. This list you have before you is conducted in a scientific way that's very specific, and we should talk about the content of the manuscript, the theme of the manuscript. Here, for instance, in Tarikh Zinder, talks about the social history of Zinder, and also we should have an overview of the author, which will help in the translation phase. If we know information, the more information we know about the manuscript, the better the translation will be. And it will give us a better overview, or more comprehensive overview of the manuscript. And so we should give some information about the author, and also the basis for the selection of the copies or the manuscript, and talking about when they were written and their conditions. And also there should be conditions for critical editions, why this was chosen instead of this factor instead of that. So this process should be highly detailed and clear. As I said, the steps for during a critical edition, also we should look at the first page, and in the planning the critical edition, we should look at the first page and last page of the manuscript, whether it's for manuscript A and manuscript B. We should speak about these 2 pages, the first and the last. And we also should talk about the first 3 pages and the last 3 or 4 pages. And we should also know whether there were pages added to the manuscript later, and whether it's written in Arabic script. We should talk about the bibliography and the index, and these are things that are found in many types of publications. As for conventions, here we must, if for instance, there is a quotation from another author, this should be cited in the critical edition, and that this citation or this quotation is taken from this or that writer. If this was an author's work, or it's a quotations from the Quran, you put them between quotation marks or you italicize them, and this is very important. And usually the italicization is used for quotations in a critical edition, especially if it has to do with Holy Writ, like Quran or Hadith. And we could also put an endnote that refers to the with a clear citation, and also we could use certain symbols to say, for instance, that this is something that's repeated. The first symbol you see here means that when we compared the 2 or collated the manuscripts, for instance, that there is a remark at the end of this page, and so we use the symbol you see here, which means that this paragraph was there, whether it's complete or incomplete, and the bullet symbol shows whether it this selection appears in the text in full or not. And the third symbol, we can use the small cube to show the repetition of a certain selection, and this is rarely found, so that the reader could know how the editor worked on the manuscript. Here we have the manuscripts A and B. I could also share another screen with you, which is manuscript A and manuscript B. And we've seen also that the manuscript B we have on the first page, that the second page is missing. We move to page 3. This is the first remark that led to manuscript B being the secondary copy because it is missing pages, and we look at the type of paper as well. But in the manuscript A, it's written on a more recent paper, but it is not missing any pages. And these two manuscripts are in Niamey, in the manuscript library, and the reference number is 37. And these two manuscripts were separate, and they were catalogued based on the author. And they are not original manuscripts, but they are copies. And these are all very old manuscripts and we could not get hold of the older manuscript in order to get more information about the copier who copied these manuscripts. But what we are concerned with here in the cataloging, it was, or categorization, it was based on the author, and we were fortunate that the two copies existed in the Library of Manuscripts in Niamey, and one of the authors, Anifu, قام بدراسة هذه المخطوطات ولكن كان التعليق يكون sorry, the remarks, it was based on the remarks used. There were remarks written, but it wasn't a critical edition of the manuscript, and so I could not include this in my presentation because this is not what concerns me, but I wanted to show the different processes that go into manuscripts, but as I previously mentioned, and in order for the valuation of the manuscript, we should scientifically study it, not just based on content, but also the manuscript itself. But we cannot study it without sound scientific methods, because these methods were designed specifically for this purpose. We have codicology and other sciences that contribute to the valuation of African manuscripts as with the manuscripts around the world. So manuscript A is complete and B is incomplete. So we choose to work on manuscript A, which is complete. And the difference between the two manuscripts is that manuscript B is missing some papers, and also the type of paper used. The one used in manuscript A has some small squares, and the copier did not leave their names on any of these copies, so we know nothing about the copyist and or the copier, sorry, and so we know that the copying happened on the behest of someone, but they could have asked the copier not to put their names on the manuscript or no, because if it has been commissioned by someone, then the say is theirs. We could have also, we didn't have marginalia that add to our information on this.
I would like to clarify another point. I'm trying to find the page that I should be talking about right now. I'll go back to the text to clarify some points to you. Here in this part, we have the text of this manuscript, and it is incomplete text, incomplete manuscript. At the beginning, we started to work on this copy of it because the kind of paper actually grabbed our attention. But we discovered at the end that it is incomplete, and the way it is done. So this is we started to work on the manuscript A that we found complete, and we had many copyists, because as you can see, we have many copyists because there is a change in the script. This is because of many scribes are working on the same manuscript. Some of them have missed some of the pages. So the B manuscript, we haven't chosen this one. I'll go to the end of this manuscript. This is the end of it. So this is page number 51. And here is another one. And as you can see, the papers do not grab our attention. But you can see that the text is full and there is nothing missing from it. And this is why we have chosen this one instead of the other. Here we have there is a space at the beginning, as you can see it. This is the first one is thank God for whom has sent the oracle to the Prophet Muhammad. So this is actually the incipit. And these papers will continue till the end. And we have at the end the explicit. the copyist tried to follow in the body of the text the same original, or the same as the one in A to be similar to the one like B. Then I will go back to to my presentation. And when we talked about the details and the description of the of this manuscript, and when we had many challenges, and this is from this Western African language, we have many of the local languages that are about places, nouns that we have, and it is written in the local languages. And these languages, let's say, if I would like to have or study this manuscript, I found many of them, like these, the ones that you see there on the screen. Let's say like the Fonimi local language, and al-agadassi. It is the name of a place as well. So these are the places that are written there in the manuscript, and these are the nouns. Sorry, so this is these are the nouns. If you don't work in this field, sometimes they don't know about it. Sometimes they cannot go and analyze and continue the translation because of the nouns that are there that they don't understand. So this causes like a lot of problems, because the way it is written in Arabic is not exactly as how it is pronounced in the original noun, which what would make it an obstacle to understanding, it. Let's say like these names of cities, Songos and Godi, Guir. And let's say on the other side, we have some of the names of the people that are there. Some of them are if it is Omar, Isa, Sulaiman, it is no problem. But when the name is different and it is of an African origin, if it is on the based on the local language, and it is not part of the Islamic names, and sometimes you cannot understand these names, especially when it is like a sentence. The name is like a sentence, like Danladi. We try to understand whether the name Danladi is the name of a place or a name of a person. So we will have if you after we finish, if you check for Danladi, so this is one of the obstacles that we have when we had the critical editing of the manuscript. So we faced this problem mainly. We tried to find and understand some of the information, because in some of sometimes the way they write the names of people is different from how they are pronounced in the original language, because there are some of the letters that are not present there. So let's say Mijanhel. So it is at the same time, it is, let's say this is Mijanhel is a name and it is a sentence at the same time. So this causes confusion. Abagoto is another thing. This is only in the first pages. It is very important when you translate for the critical editing of the manuscript is to copy exactly according to the local languages, because the manuscript should go back into the original form of it. We try to we try to get it with the same dialect of the people of the area where this manuscript comes from. Then, so sorry, the video is just breaking up. And this actually allows us to see and understand the text. And we use the local languages, and then after that, sometimes we have the Latin letters to be able to know the pronunciation. And then we acquire all the information about these words that we are going to find or we find in the manuscript. And this is especially for knowing actually how the context is going together in the right direction. And this is here. This is the historical analysis of a manuscript. And this is always happening from let's say the point of the place where it comes from, pictures of the place of where it comes from, especially the social manuscripts. So this is what we care about so much, is to find the place where it comes from. And this, especially in the modern history, this is what we try to do. And especially in so this the one that I talk about, it is in the time of the colonial period, and it is about, and there are manuscripts about many or diverse societies there in Africa. And of course, it is sometimes related to and sometimes it is related to European society, European community, or an Arab community. And this is, and we try to put it in its historical context. And we have the historical analysis of it. And this text is that we have here. It is about the narrative of the history in the colonial period. And then we try. And we tell them what happened, and this tells us what happened through the pictures that we have. And this is, we call it the next campaign from Sudan. This is the picture that we have over there that clarifies how the city looks like, and this is the enclosure wall of the royal city during this period of time. And the people living there in this palace, they are shown there in the picture, and they played a very important role of being communicators between the Sultan and the French, which are the colonials that were there during this period of time. And in the framework of this historical analysis, I would like to show you this map that you see on it, the place where this city is in Mar, and also the village of Danladi. And we can say that this is a name of a place or a person's name. So there are people who are named Danladi, and there is a city that is named Danladi as well. And this is the area and the surroundings of Zinladi. And this is Zindar over there. This is the map of Zindar. This is at the time of the arrival of the French, and this is the time of having this expedition coming from Upper Sudan. And this is the city with the fort. And this is the village of Zingu, and this is the village, and also the fortress that is there. And this is a way or a point on the way for the travelers, and it's a meeting point of traders and travelers. They stop there with their caravans. Well, and here is a picture that we have over here. That is, or something that is really, or this actually map is very important, because in these kinds of manuscripts, we have there a meeting spot for many of the different communities and different societies. So you find a mixture, a very cosmopolitan mixture. And from there, we got the paintings, we got the information as well, and we can actually identify some of the information of these areas where the people meet. And then we try to find it, and find the people who know about this history that was left there in this area, to be able to evaluate this kind of work. And according and we try to find also the oral sources of knowledge, which is what will enrich the study more and more. And it is very important as well. So to identify the different sources of archives. And now I would like to refer to let's say the colonial archives, let's say, for instance, especially with what is related to this expedition, Komodo Daju. And this is actually it tells a lot, because the captain, the leader of this expedition, was killed. And it is very important and to understand the different resources to be able to get the right information. In some cases, we have to check a lot of different resources to be able to confirm that there is the right analytical historical report. This is a lieutenant that was killed during the he was killed during the colonial period. And the other picture. And these are the archers here, or snipers. They are from Senegal or Mali. And they are carrying their equipment. And this is also part of the expedition. And this tells us about some of the details. And this is through pictures. It tells us about what is in the manuscripts. This is the palace of Kazumaju, or the fortress. So this is how it looks like. And these are nobles' pictures that were there on the right. And there are many different aspects that are related to the copying of the manuscript. Especially the analysis of the terminology that we may find in any of these texts. So this comes in the historical analysis. So when we analyze it and we analyze it, it goes into the historical analysis, and it actually enriches our knowledge and gets our knowledge deeper about this manuscript or this particular manuscript. And should be taken in consideration. And before we talk about the translation, I would like to move to this slide. What we have done with these manuscripts, I would like to show you what we have done. And this is one of the manuscripts that I have shown to you. This is the critical analysis, and this is the Arabic text as you can see it. So this is still a draft, and we are still completing it. And this is the Arabic text that we have it right next to the other original text. We have some of the words or sentences written in red. So this is these words that are written in red or highlighted in red. So the idea is that we are trying to find more and look into these words to understand them. sometimes we have the electronic editing, and sometimes we have it done manually. All this part that we have here, that we have seen, is the first book. We put F1 to show that this is the end of the first book. Then after F1, we have the F2. Well, and these are all of them are different books. So the F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, F6. So we divided them when we go on and we edit them. So just to be able to classify and understand the difference between the two texts, the one that we have gotten and we started with, and the second one that we have translated the text into it. So before the translation, this was a lot of work that has been done, and a lot of effort that has been exerted. This is just to avoid any kind of mistakes or possible mistakes. And this is to be able to present it at the end in a sound way. Otherwise, the translation will come out not reflecting the original text. So if we talk now about the translation, I will go back to my presentation, my original presentation. This is not the file that I would like to open. Then for the translation, it is subject to some of the rules and laws. We have to finish first the copying, and then the critical analysis and studying it, and then the editing of the nas and the editing of the text before we reach the translation phase. And it could be done to each unit separately. And it could be done in the original language. And then after that, use this text for getting it into any other language. The translation will never be 100% equal to the original text, but we tried to get it as close as possible. I don't know whether the time will allow me to continue reading this text. In this paragraph. it is related to. This is about the arrival of Kazim Jew expedition to Zinder, and they started to get ready for the invasion. So it is related to an invasion or a campaign. And they wanted to actually capture Rabah. And it is to the west, Rabah is to the west of the Niger. And before the arrival of the French. They passed by Zindar. This is talking about someone that will spend his night under a tree with his friends, and then when they went to the king, they asked to enter, and then they entered to the king and they talked to him, and then he replied in salute, and he welcomed them. And then the king said that I would like to have or meet someone in particular who understands Arabic. Then they got him someone that understands the Arabic. So the king told him, I want you to translate whatever they are saying. So he replied that okay, I will do it. And this person actually spoke the Hausa, and then what he has been asked to do by the king is that that the king first said, you can come and stay as guests with me. And mainly the Arabic language is the royal palace main language. And the French do know about this, and they were ready really for this. And they had the translators. And there are people that are talking in Arabic. And they are translating all the information. They are like the mediators between the intermediaries between the French and the king.
And then he was asking someone to speak in Arabic, so as to translate between both parties. We apologize as we cannot hear the speaker as there is a connection issue. نعتذر هناك انقطاع بالصوت لا يمكننا. We apologize, there is a connection issue and we cannot hear the speaker anymore. Are you with us? Doctor, can you hear us? And the connection is back. He was asking them for someone to speak in Arabic. We apologize for the technical issue as there was a connection problem. I'm going to continue from where I have left off. The Tarikh have settled under the King Suleiman's reign, and there was the Majinhali story, and this story or the chronicles told us the marabouts and the desert relationship and how it was at that point. And we are aware and King Suleiman was there, and there was great conflict at that point between the family within the palace itself and the entourage of the king also. And then we have the Wahyan king, and then disease, that he was diseased and he had some sort of a disease. And afterwards, there was the new king, King Amadou. And after King Amadou, the authority was disseminated upon several parties. And King Amadou, that has had his own campaigns. There was also Kanu, Battle of Kanu, and Captain Mekazou, and also there were many campaigns that have happened at that time, from French campaigns on Sudan in the 19th century. And several invasions also. And this campaign, through this campaign or this commission or this mission, has put Captain Nemotai, that captain was the leader who has announced the French-English or the French-Anglo declaration in 1890 on the 5th of August. Also, this manuscript, I have to say, that is one of the most important historical documentations. And it was written by a local scholar or researcher, and it was used, the direct and indirect messages or discourse was used in this manuscript. We have written to also the culture, the social life in Sudan through this manuscript, and there is also the French translation for this text. No, this is not it. I am trying to find it to display it. This is the translation that we have, the translation from the Arabic script, as you can see, that I am displaying. And I hope that we can actually end this, we can complete the translation in 2020. We haven't completed it, and we can publish it in the same year, next year, 2022. Hopefully we can do that. We still have some of the details that are lacking that we need to deal with before we have the final version of the translation of this manuscript. As I was saying, to conclude, I want to say that this manuscript, this text is very important, as it has a great social value, and it shows the different experiences of those who lived, or the Tarikh in Zinder at that time. And definitely the editing and the translation, there's a lot of efforts being exerted in these two processes, and it is for the greater good at the end of the day for the society, because the people do own this heritage and this history, and they need to know their history. They're entitled to know their history. There is also the research or the study about the manuscripts that display the different aspects of life at that point. And this is actually the text from Zinder, even before its publishing. I think it has had a great impact, specifically of the social value. And I personally remember that when we had the elections, so the authorities came to meet me so I could read a little bit of the texts from the manuscript, and to get to know all of the different names and all of the different details. So I can get to know those people who are actually entitled to become part of the authority and to hold positions in the government. And of course, they don't have the right to inherit these positions, but I had to raise the awareness about the history of the people from the texts, from the manuscripts, from the text in the manuscripts, that is like a pillar to lean on. So it could show who are those who are rightfully entitled to be part of the authority and to hold positions in the state. And after the death of the king, and here we know how important the social value is, and also there is another scientific value, as it gives the opportunity for having a local voice for those local citizens, and in development of the nation and the development of the culture of the nation, from all of the different local history that is written by the hands of locals. And it's very important to know and to listen to the voices of everyone. And we don't want to write history and listen to those who are in power and those who are victorious only. We want to listen to the locals, and we have to know that the history has shown that there was a great struggle, and they actually fought all what has happened. I will stop right here, and I am willing to answer any questions if you have any questions. May peace be upon you all. I have to say, just since no one has asked, I would like to discuss with you some of the issues that you have spoken about, specifically when it comes to the editing. Can you hear me? I couldn't hear you at the beginning. However, right now, would you kindly ask the question again? I would like to discuss with you some of the issues when it comes to the validation of some of the text. First of all, thank you for this amazing workshop. However, there are some points that I would like to discuss. First of all, you were talking about some of the manuscripts that you did not depend on the manuscripts that was lacking. However, you depended on the complete manuscripts. Mr. Sini, can you hear me? Now, and you depended on the full manuscript. Actually, I think that poses a problem. Maybe the one that is lacking is the most correct, the most authentic, and that means that if it's shortcoming or lacking, this is not enough. So we don't depend on it when it comes to validation of authenticity. Maybe the one that lacks some pages or something is actually authentic. So maybe I would depend on, and then I would see what are the bits and pieces that are lacking, and then I take them from other versions. So maybe the version that is lacking is the best one that I can use. This is the first point. I think that we should not eliminate the version that is lacking some pages or has some bits that are not existing anymore. So, and I think you should depend on this one, and maybe fill the gaps with any other version. This is my first point. The second point is that you mentioned that to validate the authenticity or to perform critical editing of the text, there are many processes that we say that we depend on the unique manuscripts, meaning if you have a manuscript that has only one version, you would critically edit it depending on this version, because in editing, this is known as the unique version. and then maybe you depend on other resources. And the third point is that the Arabic text that you have displayed with us, there are many linguistic mistakes, and these linguistic mistakes, for instance, in page 7, it states وَكَانَتْ مَعْهُمْ أَوْ بَيْنَهُمْ. وَكَانَت is used for females or the feminine pronouns in Arabic. And the part that you have spoken, that you have read in Arabic has many linguistic mistakes. So these linguistic mistakes needs to be edited so that the text could be correct. I am pretty sure that the translation is going to be correct. However, the part in Arabic itself needs editing on its own, and this is not something easy to do. So we have 3 points. The first point is that the lacking document or version. The second one is that the unique version. I know that you have many versions, and maybe you'll find one version, maybe that is true. And the third is the linguistic errors in the text. And thank you so much for this amazing lecture. Thank you so much, and I'd like to appreciate all of the 3 points that you have mentioned. When it comes to me, the lacking version or the shortcoming, the version with shortcomings. I think that maybe it could also be the authentic or the original version. So if we compare the one that's lacking with the one that is complete, maybe we can reach a few points. So I think, in my opinion, that the complete version is actually the one that is authentic, correct, and it will have the highest number of knowledge or information. And I think actually both versions were very, very close to one another. However, I think that the one that was complete had many more information. So I think the one that's complete has more information, more knowledge. And I think that through the critical editing, we will have full, complete information. That is in my opinion. And I also want to say that if there's something else that is very important, and if we did not have 2 versions or 2 manuscripts, then I think that we need to edit or critically edit or validate the manuscript in front of us, as we only have one unique version. We don't have 2 or 3 different versions to compare with each other, and hence we perform our critical editing that way. And when it comes to the linguistic errors in Arabic, yes, that is true. There are some mistakes because we are still working on this version up till now. We have some issues that have to do with writing, and we have to move forward with the work that we're going, and we have to continue working on it and correcting all that in the coming time. And thank you so much for your comments. There's also another question in the chat. For instance, So I'm going to answer some of the questions in the chat. When it comes to the first question, the first question is, how do you critically edit the rare manuscripts, or what school of critical editing do you adopt? When it comes to the method that I've taken, or the school, is the analysis and the editing or validation. And I think personally, I think the best way, or only the only way that I could perform that with the manuscripts, even if they are unique and rare manuscripts, I think that there's just one way, because I would like to increase the value of these manuscripts. There are some of the manuscripts that are rare, and sometimes the value is different. So when it comes to the methodology, I can imagine that it's the same. And we categorize them, or we describe them, and then we go through codicology, and afterwards we critically edit them, and analyze that, and afterwards we start translating them. And we have to bear in mind that we have to translate them at the very beginning, as if we do translate them at the beginning and not attain the information that we need, then we need to go through other steps that would start with the specifications or the descriptions, and then the translation at the end. As for the other question that you have asked, when it comes to the translation, whether it is the Arabic or the French, when it comes to the modern versions or the modern publications, I think if we are going to publish, I think that we cannot publish in both languages, and hence we actually choose one of the languages, whether it is even, let's say, Japanese or Chinese or any language. And I work with the French. That's the language that I use. It's my language. And I can also have it translated in English. But since Arabic is the main language of the transcripts, that means that we're going to have the text in Arabic first, and then we're going to translate it into English and to French. And that's why I'm saying that at the end, sometimes it turns into French, as I said, English, as I said. Thank you so much. What is the method that you have taken when it comes to the manuscripts? When it comes to the manuscripts, the different schools and the different methodologies. Yes, this is the same that I have mentioned that we follow with the rare manuscripts. And I also know that this school is this methodology used in Morocco and in European countries and in the USA. The methodology is not one person that does that. the speakers when it comes to the methodology that we may use at the very beginning, it is the description, and afterwards we use the critical editing, and afterwards we translate. And when it comes to the description or the specifications, most of the manuscripts or the text of manuscripts are in the local languages. And when it comes to critical editing, it does require a lot of work, a lot of effort that is exerted. And we do the same thing, is the same methodology for all of the different manuscripts. We describe them, and then we critically edit them, and then we analyze them, and then we translate them at the very end. Thank you so much.
أهمية دراسة خوارج النص مثل التملكات والوقفيات.
The paratexts, do you have any of these examples when it comes to the paratext that we can see them? Would you like me to repeat the question again? We're talking today about the importance of the paratexts, like the waqfiyat tamallukat. Do you have any of the examples of the paratexts, different types of paratexts from Zinder that we can see? When it comes to Zinder, the text itself, this manuscript, I have explained that it has been written by one of the writers who are actually still alive. And I have explained that this is the person that has written it down. And it is Boukhari Tanoudi, and this was by Abdou Moumouni. And Abdou Moumouni actually works in art and in politics, and he was asked by Boukhari Tanoudi, he asked Boukhari Tanoudi when it comes to the library and the library that we have. We would gather all of the different collections of the Abdou Moumouni. And Abdou Moumouni was a great scholar and he was very interested in these manuscripts, and he would collect them. And he has collected many of them, and it is one of the main pillars. I hope that main pillars in manuscripts and in history. I hope that I have answered actually your questions and the importance of this manuscripts. And I also tried for many years to try to start some of the projects in Nigeria. So I can attain some of the other manuscripts that are in Nigeria. There's a problem with the audio over the connection. The speaker is saying that when we are trying to research or trying to discover the manuscripts, we find that some of them are in some of the private or the public and the private libraries. And the private libraries, we are trying to have a discussion with the owners of the libraries so we can attain these manuscripts. If you would please. You have compared two different manuscripts when it comes to the text, the script, the writing, the handwriting, and the paper that it has in both of them. Is it the same? Is it the same style? You were comparing, for instance, between two manuscripts and how they are, you have compared between them. So how about the styles? I can say that, yes, I have displayed both manuscripts and they were actually very similar. So in my opinion, it is the same. However, the basin of the writing, the basin where the writing came from is not the same, because this is where the difference came, and the scribing, the copying of the manuscript was also different. And when it comes to the first manuscript, it was by one of the scribers. And I am trying to find that manuscripts to display it upon you. The first one was by one scriber, however, the second one was by multiple scribers. So thank you so much. Are there any further questions? Are there any questions? Thank you so much for your great presentation. This was a very interesting presentation, and we have benefited from it greatly. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'd like to thank the interpreters of the